Munatira Kanakachi Jaya Sadha Madhav Kunjabihari Jaya Sadha Madhav Kunjabihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivare Yasodana Prajatana Sangana Yasodana Prajatana Sangana Yamunatira Vanachati Yamunatira Anatati Jayu Sadhamat Bhava Atunjabi Hati Jaya Radha Madhava Sunjabi Hati Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Jaya Gopi Ganapala Girivarasamvasi Yashoratandana Bhajajanarayana Yashoratandana Bhajajanarayana Atira Vanach Ahari Yamratira Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Padmaham Sarvabhijaya Jaya Tadasati Srimad Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Jaya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Parabrahamsa Prabhujakacharya Shodashati Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9, titled Prahlad Pacifies Lord Nrsimhadev with Prayers, text number 13. Sarve hiyami vidhikarastava satvadamno Pramadayo vayam iveshagna chodvijanta Maya bhutaya tamasukaya chasya vikriditam bhagavato ruchiravatara sarve hyami vidhikarastava sattva damno Brahmadayo Vayam Hivesha Nachodvijata Maya Bhutaya Tamasukaya Chasya Vikriditam Bhagavato Ruchiravatara Sarve Hyami Vidikarastava Sattva Damno Brahmandayo Vayami Veshadna Chodvichita Premaya Bhutaya Tamasukaya Chasya Vikriditam Bhagavato Ruchiravatara Sarve, all. He, certainly. Ami, these. Vidikara, executors of orders. Tava, your. Satvadamna, being always situated in the transcendental world. Brahma Adai, the demigods headed by Lord Brahma. Vayam, we. Eva, like. Isha, O my Lord. Na, not. Cha, and. Udvijanta, who are afraid of your fearful appearance. Premaya, for the protection. Bhutaye, for the increase. Uta, it is said. Atma Sukhaya, for personal satisfaction by such pastimes. Cha, also. Asya, of this material world. Vikriditam, manifested. Bhagavata, of your lordship. Ruchira, very pleasing. Avatarai, by your incarnations. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O my Lord, all these demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, are sincere servants of your lordship, who are situated in a transcendental position. Therefore, they are not like us, Prahlad and his father, the demon Hiranyakashipu. Your appearance in this fearful form is your pastime for your own pleasure. Such an incarnation is always meant for the protection and improvement of the universe. Report. Prahlad Maharaj wanted to assert that his father and the other members of his family were all unfortunate because they were demoniac, whereas the devotees of the Lord are always fortunate because they are always ready to follow the orders of the Lord. When the Supreme Lord appears in this material world in his various incarnations, he performs two functions: saving the devotee and vanquishing the demon. Paricharanaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. Lord Nrsimhadev, for example, appeared for the protection of his devotee. Such pastimes as those of Nrsimhadev are certainly not meant to create a fearful situation for the devotees. But nonetheless, the devotees, being very simple and faithful, were afraid of the fierce incarnation of the Lord. Therefore, Lord Maharaj, in the following prayer, requests the Lord to give up his anger. Om Gyanacharmandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshumatamyana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. So Prahlad is continuing to pacify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Nrsimhadev, and he is making some distinctions in this verse. Prabhupada is making it in the purport between the Devatas, the demigods, and the demons, uh, the family into which Prahlad was born. Of course, we can understand these terms, or these terms are used in two different ways. One is, I guess you could say, a genetic relationship, in that the demons were descended from Kashyapa Muni by one of his wives, and the demigods by the other one of his wives. Uh, and it is in this sense that Prahlad calls himself a demon, because he is descended from that family. And then, of course, there is the distinction in terms of behavior, in that some people are favorable towards the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and have various good qualities, and others lack those good qualities. I won't say that one is of a divine or demigodly or demoniac, and then, or conversely, a demoniac mentality or nature. And this is described at length in Bhagavad Gita. And of course, under that definition, Prahlad is not a demon, although his father, Hiranyakashipu, is. And the points that are one of the aspects of Lord Nrsimhadev that Prahlad is bringing up is his fearsome nature. Uh, and especially, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, or alludes to in the purport, that Lord Nrsimhadev is very fearful for the demons as part of his pastime to be very fearsome, uh, in order to make good, you could say, on Krishna's statement in the Bhagavad Gita. Parichanayana sadhanam vinachaya tradushkritam. Um, Dharma Samstapa Artaya Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. That in order to protect the devotees and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of Dharma, Krishna says that I come in every age, in every yuga. And one of these forms is, of course, Nrsimhadev, that we could say, at least from a certain perspective, that or as you know, uh, Lord Nrsimhadev especially um, is emblematic of the first half of this quoted verse from Bhagavad Gita of giving protection to the devotees and vanquishing the demons. So he, of course, came to protect Prahlad Maharaj and to vanquish Hiranyakashipu. Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day is, of course, later this week. And Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day is, of course, also Hiranyakashipu's disappearance day. This, or some devotees sometimes refer to it as that, because the two are intimately connected. And we might ask, uh, so I was talking about devotees being fortunate and demoniac persons being unfortunate. And of course, we recognize that to be the case, generally speaking. One who is in the grips of sense gratification, of the material energy, is always unfortunate. If one sees with transcendental vision, with the eyes of Shastra, then even if one is, even if a person is incredibly wealthy, well situated, popular, able to enjoy any sensual pleasure that they might desire, they are still very unfortunate um, because they are under the grip of sense gratification, of the Lord's illusory energy, uh, which is a cycle, samsara, of birth, death, old age, and disease, and of happiness and distress. We understand that by the demoniac propensity to try to enjoy more and more, persons who give in to that propensity invite their own destruction by contacts with sense gratification. It's said elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, I've quoted this before also, um, that the so Sparsha Boga, the touch, that which is born from the touch of sense gratification of material enjoyment, is dukkha yonaya, is the source of sense of dukkha, of misery. So we understand that demoniac people who, by definition, chase after sense gratification are always unfortunate. And it might seem that they are also unfortunate in pastimes such as these, where they're being killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Uh, one could say, sometimes in the analysis of historical and present day Indian social dynamics, there's the social class called the Dalits, right, which literally means scattered. We sing every morning, Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam, that Lord Nrsingadev um, I guess you could say, made the wasp-like Hiranyakashipu into a dot, as in this time literally he scattered him. He pulled apart uh, Hiranyakashipu bodily, and from kind of say prima facie or at a first glance, this does seem very unfortunate, right? I don't think anybody listening to this or anybody ever would like to have their body scattered into various pieces, which makes, I've made this point before, it makes this pastime an odd choice for Narada Muni to narrate, given the framing uh, of the of the question that he was asked. It was Maharaj Yudhisthira, I believe, if I remember from a few chapters ago, that asked Narada Muni, uh, "Is the Lord partial?" Uh, because he saw, uh, I believe the impetus was that he saw Lord Krishna uh, kill Shishupal using the Shuddhashava chakra during the Rajasuya Yajna to crown uh, Yudhishthir as emperor of the world. And, some doubt came. Is the Lord partial? Does he like some people better than others? Uh, and, one can see, just as a side note, the actually elevated philosophical um, viewpoints of the Vedic literature. So, a lot of people, if they found that God was partial, and but they happened to find that they were on the side that God was partial towards, they'd be like, oh yeah, let the good times roll. But if you think of the pastimes of Maharaj Yudhishthir and Lord Krishna and the Pandavas were always being protected by Krishna in one way or another. But still, that is what caused this doubt to come. That, oh, the Supreme Lord is favoring me, but how can he be equal in that case? And uh, to give an example of how the uh, Supreme Lord is equal to both the demigods and the demons, Narada Muni chose to tell a story uh, where the Supreme Lord was killing a demon to put the demigods back into their place. Seems like an odd choice because, as kind of being mentioned in this purport, it seems like in this case the demons were unfortunate and the devotees um, or the demigods were fortunate. The demon or the demoniac empire was being kind of put back into its place, and the demigod empire, the demigods, were being put back into administration of the universe. But we understand, of course, that actually the Supreme Lord is all good. Uh, it is one quality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of God, in all spiritual and religious traditions, that He is good. Not only that He is good, but one could say that He is goodness, uh, in the sense that what it means to be good. Um, is based within the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means, of course, that no contact with him can be bad. That even when externally it seems bad or unfortunate, by whatever way one comes into contact with the Supreme Lord, one ends up gaining. This is why when Diti uh, was told that her sons would be demoniac because of not following the proper rules and regulations for bearing children, when she was told that, she lamented. But when she was told that they would be killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that eased her suffering because she knew that being killed by the Supreme Person is actually a great boon. Uh, and we see actually that this did occur. Rupa Goswami explains in the Lagna Bhagavatam that even though Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu didn't understand that Lord Nrsimhadev was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were benefited immensely by being killed by Varaha and Nrsimha, so that they got immense power and wealth in their next life as Ravana and Kumbhakarna. And even then, they didn't recognize Lord Ram as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then they got even more power and opulence in their next life as Shishupal and Dantavakra. And it was only in that life, as the Sudarshan Chakra was flying towards them, that they realized that this personality, Krishna, is the original person, is the supreme personality of Godhead. And therefore, when they died at that time, uh, they ended up attaining liberation. We can see other examples of this throughout Bhagavatam as well. Uh, Kamsa comes to mind. He was killed personally by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Putana, of course, as well. And in so many cases, any contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is beneficial for everyone, even if at the moment it might not seem like it. From the external point of view, it seemed like Lord Nrsimhadev was creating a very inauspicious or very unfortunate position for the demons. I think there's a painting done by a devotee somewhere of the demoniac armies rushing at Lord Nrsimhadev, and he is having his 8 arms just killing all of them, um, which seems once again like a very unfortunate position, even though in actuality it is fortunate. And we can sometimes take a somewhat, mm, or there can be, both by outsiders and even by devotees, a somewhat similar approach or viewpoint on devotional service. Said that Lord Nrsimhadev, um, even though his pastimes are not meant to create a fearful situation for the devotees, Because the devotees are simple and faithful, they were afraid of the fierce incarnation of the Lord. Of course, devotional service is not, per se, as fierce as a lion staring down at you most of the time. Uh, but it can sometimes seem very difficult or unfortunate. There are all these rules and regulations, especially looking from the outside to people who are unfamiliar with devotional service. They might see the lifestyle of the devotees, um, and say, why would anybody do this? Even the basic rules, that is the four regulative principles, are basically the sum and substance of modern Western life. There was this exchange where when some members of the Gaudiya Math went to India or went to England, I think it was Lord Zetland was his name, if I remember correctly, asked them, he is apparently a bit familiar with Indian culture, and said, can you make me into a Brahmana? And the devotees, the sannyasis who were there, said, yes, you just have to follow these four rules. And the Englishman who heard that, after they heard the four regulative principles, said, impossible. This is our very life here in England. We can't give this up. And that is just the basic rules. What to speak of the other austerities that devotees sometimes take on, such as sleeping on the floor, taking cold showers, standing out distributing books for hours and hours at a time, rain or shine, or sleet or snow. Uh, Even though we understand these are very fortunate activities, people view them as unfortunate. Um, so they say all of these things like, oh, it's just a cult. These people are brainwashed because nobody could give up all of these things and adopt all of these austerities willingly. So, they brainwash the devotees. This Maha Mantra, they say, is just a self-hypnosis device. They feed them low protein diets to keep them docile. All these things. I'm sure people have heard these accusations before by some people. But actually, we understand that those who take on devotional service are most fortunate. Uh, Although, in addition to kind of, I guess you could say, the outsiders uh, viewing things as unfortunate, sometimes devotees, not to the same degree, of course, unless they gloop, uh, might have mm, some of that same mentality to a certain extent. If they have, for one reason or another, lost taste in devotional service. Might be the mentality might arise that, yes, hanging out with devotees, associating with devotees, coming to festivals, this is nice. But, chanting is giving up 2 hours of my day, chanting, following these rules and regulations that, make people look at us weird, um, having to act or dress or keep our hair a certain way. These might be, uh, people might think of these as unfortunate, uh, because, they are admittedly a quite a large departure from the lifestyle that most of us were born into. And sometimes, this even becomes an rather extreme cases. Um, Last time my Guru Maharaj was here, he mentioned that during a darshan, somebody told him uh, that uh, the four regulative principles and 16 rounds requirements had no precedent in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Uh, in other words, that Srila Prabhupada just made them up. Uh, which is, of course, nonsense. Srila Prabhupada didn't make things up. He spoke and taught according to parampara. We can understand that the reason for that mentality is because we are viewing, like the devotees in this pastime, view Lorna Shringadev as a fearful situation, as a, you could say, inauspicious situation. We sometimes can feel devotional service, uh, at least certain aspects, can be too much, too intense. When we feel that way, we should understand that the reason is typically because, in one way or another, we are not practicing properly. Uh, the exact way that we are not practicing properly can vary depending on the circumstances. Because, of course, it is said that bhakti is a razor's edge. It's very thin. There's a lot of ways that one can be deviated. Perhaps one big one, of course, is if one is committing offenses, uh, then one is liable to lose taste for the process of hearing and chanting and following the rules and regulations. Of course, if one's rounds are not good, that can also lead to losing taste. Uh, Association with non-devotees, of course, leads uh, to losing taste for devotional service and being attracted to the world of Maya. So all these things, there's various different ways to uh, hit a stumbling block, let's say, on the uh, walk back to Godhead. But we should understand that if we are not seeing devotional service, not seeing the practice of bhakti yoga as auspicious, fortunate, transcendental, joyous, blissful, um, then we should look at our own practice of devotional service and see where we might be missing the mark. Because if we aren't feeling the bliss of devotional service, we only have ourselves to blame. It's something that we're doing. It's something that we need to correct. And another, uh, way that we feel, I guess maybe the overarching way, that we feel that uh, being in contact with Krishna or having too much Krishna um, might be or might feel like a fearful situation. Is that, it's explained in Bhagavatam that devotees end up losing a lot of things, a lot of material things. But if we are very attached to our material situation, that might be a fear that we have, that I might lose my material possessions, or I might lose my material desires, which we say we want, but when push comes to shove, do we? Uh, do we really want to give up our material aspirations, our material desires, our material ambitions, and uh, only desire uh, to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to really say, let thy will and not my will be done. Or even more, to not have a difference between thy will and my will. It's a question that we should ask. Question, uh, do I really want to give up my material attachments, my material entanglements? And am I really practicing devotional service in a way that will allow me to overcome, to transcend those material entanglements? So we should be very vigilant of this. It's a question that, of course, ultimately only us and Krishna know the answer to. Uh, but we should, do some introspection. I'm giving this class, of course, as much for myself as for anybody else who might feel this way. Uh, am I really practicing to the intensity that I could be? And do I really want to give up uh, my spots in the material world? Or do I want to keep trying to enjoy it in one way or another? Uh, and if I do want to get the hell out of here, am I practicing in an intense enough way and with a surrendered enough attitude to actually be able to do that? So I will stop here. I have about 15 minutes before the doors open. Uh, if there are any comments or questions or additions or subtractions.
Haribo Prabhu,
Hare Krishna.
thank you very much for an enlightening class and speaking about the disappearance day of Hiranyakashipu. Very funny. So you mentioned that if you're not feeling the bliss in devotional service, that it's usually due to the cause is actually the practitioner's
Mhm.
level of practice. So my question relates to um, obstacles created by poor health. So, for example, if one gets an Achilles tendon rupture and then they can't dance in the kirtan.
Mhm.
And so, there's a considerable subsidence of bliss and devotional service. Um, there might be other karmic reactions that are unfolding during anartha nivritti, which really causes a breakdown in the body and compromises the functions of the senses. And devotional service, a lot of the bliss is predicated on being able to actually use the executive senses, because this is how Narada Muni defines devotional service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchite. So if your senses are heavily compromised, then your bliss is also heavily compromised. Um, but we see in the case of great souls, like even our Guru Maharaj, where, in the early 2000s, his health was compromised. and he wrote Searching for Vedic India. So even though his working senses were compromised, he was still relishing
Yeah.
serving Srila Prabhupada. So it seems like in order to not let health compromise your bliss in devotional service, you need to already have been a great soul. But when your health is compromised during an artha nivritti, it's very difficult to actually maintain your bliss. So, how do you basically transcend compromised senses during an artha nivritti so that you can actually maintain your bliss?
Yeah, so it is definitely more difficult. Uh, it's more difficult in every situation for souls in an artha nivritti to maintain their Krishna consciousness uh, than great souls, pretty much by definition. But specifically, when the senses, when the body is not cooperating. Uh, yeah, the process, putting in the work to the process is definitely more difficult, but the process is the same. One might not be able to dance in kirtan, like for example, with the Achilles tendon uh, injury, but one can still hear the kirtan, clap one's hands, etc. Even with the, uh, if somebody is in mental decline, uh, one, we understand, of course, that mental decline, the expression of the senses and the self is not evident, but the self is not affected. Right? We see even some devotees now, Prabhupada disciples who are older, having issues with, like dementia or Alzheimer's or things like that. We understand that even though to us it seems like the bliss or the soul might be affected, the soul is separate from the body. So the bliss is there, even if to external vision we can't see it. But yeah, I guess the uh, answer would be to use the difficulties to go deeper into the process, to take more shelter. Of course, famously, Queen Kunti prays, let these calamities come upon us again and again. Uh, because when these calamities are happening to us, we can remember you. Even just remembering Krishna is devotional service, and that means to bliss. And even though it's more difficult in these difficult situations, we can kind of use them as more motivation or more impetus to go into the process of devotional service. One situation that came to mind when you were asking your question is devotees in the Soviet Union, um, specifically as told in the book Salted Bread. I was told the story by somebody who read it. I haven't read it myself. But one of the devotees described in that book actually left his body. And in the senses, the body was so overwhelmed, actually to the point of death. He died in the gulag. But his cellmate, who was not a devotee, actually described that when he was leaving, he was blissful. Even though his body was shutting down, he had his cellmate shave his head, leaving a sika. He tied a bed sheet as a dhoti, used like toothpaste or dirt or something to mark tilak, sat in a cross-legged or lotus position, had a smile on his face, and then left his body. Uh, So it is possible, even in those situations, to fully remember Krishna, even if the body is so disturbed that one is dying, actually. Uh, so yeah, in the age of Anartha Nivritti, or in the time of Anartha Nivritti, it's more difficult, but we can use that difficulty uh, in order to go deeper into the process, in order to surrender more. We can use any difficulty or any non-difficulty in order to surrender more. Uh, so yeah, that's what came to mind as far as my thoughts. I don't know if any of the more senior members of our Sangha here have any comments about uh, undergoing or practicing devotional service while the body is not cooperating.
Well, I missed a lot period. I think I missed
Do you?
what you might have covered. I know, like Achilles, like you had mentioned, your Achilles.
Not mine. That's
That's a question. Um, like when I travel, when I go rush for a while, some of the most ecstatic kirtans I've ever been to was at this motorhome, just with a little small bell, and just some sadhava, just very gentle, and it was so ecstatic internally, you know, just it didn't. With Achilles, you can just close your eyes and just whirl and dance, and
Mm,
I do that a lot. But if sometimes I want to dance alone
mm,
in a big program, so I close my eyes and I'm just doing like last night's kirtan with the African dance. It was happening so beautifully. I was just spinning and whirling and jumping. Meanwhile, it looks like my body is just, I'm just swaying, doing the Swami step. But no, what's going on inside is different. You know,
Sarka Prabhu, I had a feeling you'd have a comment about this.
Hare Krishna. I do have a comment. First, I want to say that Srila Prabhupada always consistently insisted that there is no impediment to devotional service.
Mhm.
And he was very insistent about this, and he repeated it over and over again, that if you want to engage in devotional service, material circumstances absolutely have no bearing, that you can engage in devotional service no matter what the circumstances are. There's always a way, somehow or other, because we're not these bodies. Um, if we're not this body, then really whatever happens that pertains to the body should not be affecting the spirit soul. Anyway, that was Srila Prabhupada's position. Um, any suggestion to the contrary, he would just have no part of that. Um, he insisted that there's no material impediment to devotional service, and with Srila Prabhupada, that was the final word. My practical experience um, is that I guess I was in my 30s, mid to late 30s, when uh, I started having some serious uh, bodily problems, um, a series of serious injuries, began to limit the types of service that I could do. Um, I had to endure horrific pain, and at times I began to question what Srila Prabhupada had said, that there's no material impediment. Um, I seriously began to doubt that, because it seemed to me like there were serious impediments. And I was experiencing, I thought, some pretty severe impediments. And what I gradually came to realize is that sometimes the specific nature of your service, the particular type of service, may change. You nonetheless can always render service. Sometimes it's very limited. I cannot dance without extraordinary pain and the risk of paralyzing myself. There were times in my life when I could not chant. I didn't have the strength to push the air through my vocal cords. But I was able to hear, and I engaged in some very intense hearing. It was actually one of the most ecstatic periods of my entire life. I was bedbound for 5 years. I couldn't move. I couldn't even get to the bathroom. I couldn't do anything, and I could not chant. So during that time, I just listened to recordings of Srila Prabhupada. Most ecstatic time of my entire life. Incredibly ecstatic, super duper Krishna conscious. It was wonderful. And so much so that I would say that if I had the chance to go back and live it over again, I wouldn't change anything. It was so immensely purifying. I made so much advancement. And at this stage of my life, presently, I can chant a little, but on the whole, I'm experiencing worse bodily problems than ever before in my life. But I have an incredibly ecstatic morning program every day. I begin my day very, very early. I chant a whole bunch of prayers. I have a wonderful Mangala Artik. I can barely walk around. I can hardly get to and from the bathroom. I use a walker now to get to and from the bathroom, and it's a lot of difficulty. Let me tell you, there's an incredible amount of difficulty with my body and pain that is mind-boggling, just indescribable. But in spite of it all, I think I'm pretty ecstatic in Krishna consciousness. I'm having a blast in spite of it all. And I find all kinds of ways to engage myself in devotional service. I'm working on I've got about a half dozen different writing projects going on that are I get so jacked up by this that I forget about eating and sleeping completely. I just can't stop. Very, very ecstatic. There's so many ways to render devotional service, and sometimes you go through some pretty difficult times, and it seems like an insurmountable impediment. But with time, you learn how to adjust. There's all kinds of ways to adjust, and through those adjustments, you learn new ways to render devotional service. And so, at this point, I can say with some confidence that I agree with Srila Prabhupada that there actually is no impediment to devotional service. One way or another, you can always render service. I have seen devotees that were, older devotees who were afflicted with Alzheimer's and couldn't remember anything. They had no idea who they were, or what was going on, and yet, if anyone said the word Krishna to them, they would suddenly break into kirtan and become ecstatic and start dancing around. There was one very elderly woman named Isha, Mother Isha. used to live in the Boston Temple. And when I first became a devotee, she was a resident of the Brooklyn Temple. And she took care of Tulsi Devi. And she also, in the film, the Hare Krishna people, um, there is a scene of her transcribing Srila Prabhupada's dictations. She's sitting behind a typewriter with headphones, and Srila Prabhupada's sound vibration is going through her ears and out her fingertips. Um, I I met her at that time, wonderful, incredibly sweet devotee, and completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, although she was very, very elderly at the time, and lots of arthritis and all kinds of other problems. Didn't give any consideration to her bodily condition at all. She was just ecstatic in Krishna consciousness, and anyone that came near, she was just full of Krishna Katha. Um, and I swear to you, this woman glowed. Her entire body had a golden aura, very intense, very bright. Her whole body appeared to glow like gold. Extraordinary. Anyway, even after dementia, she still was ecstatic in Krishna consciousness. Um, she had she had filled her consciousness so much with Krishna that she forgot everything, but she still couldn't forget Krishna. Um, she was put in an assisted living facility, and the devotees used to go and visit her periodically and bring her prasad. Um, and she didn't, she couldn't remember the devotees. She couldn't remember anything, but she would still chant Hare Krishna all the time. The devotees would talk to the various nurses and attendants in this facility, and they would always inquire about her. Who is this woman and what is the story with her? She's always chanting Hare Krishna. At all times of the day and night, she suddenly breaks into kirtan and starts dancing around. She's extremely elderly and completely debilitated, but she'll suddenly, she can hardly move, but she suddenly jumps up, starts dancing around and chanting Hare Krishna. Anyway, my own experience is that, and I'm absolutely at the worst stage of my life. I can literally check out at any moment. I am racked with pain that is indescribable and that most people will probably never experience. But in spite of it all, I'm pretty jacked up in Krishna consciousness. It's quite ecstatic, and all of the service that I used to do, I can no longer do. Um, Everything that I enjoy doing, and it's been very frustrating. The process of adjusting to all of the changes in my life has been very, very difficult and very frustrating. Really hard, extremely hard making the adjustments. But through it all, what always became clear is that Krishna always provides a way. Somehow or other, there's always a way to remember Krishna, to think of Krishna, to render service in ways that you never really thought about before. Sometimes, or sometimes it's something that you kind of thought, well, that may be an option, but never really realized how the extent to which you could absorb yourself and become quite ecstatic in that way. Um, so you know, pretty much every devotee, if they live long enough, they're going to experience some serious bodily issues. And my advice to them is don't look upon it as an impediment, because it actually is not an impediment. There is no impediment. It just means that you have to change. You know, what you thought was the way to render devotional service, maybe you can't dance anymore, for example, but there are other things that you can do. You know, you don't necessarily have to dance. I lie in a bed 24/7. There's no question of dancing. I used to energetically play murdunga. I can't do that anymore. But I hasn't it hasn't negatively impacted my spiritual ecstasy, and I continue to advance um, very nicely in spite of all of the bodily problems. So that there's always ways. There's so many things that one can do. Um, you can listen to recordings. You can, if your eyes still work, you can read. My eyes are failing, but I thank God I can still read. I might have to read some really large text, but I can still read. I can't hear very well, but if I crank my devices up to the max, I can hear somewhat. If I cup my hands to my ears, I can hear myself chant. Um, and my God, if you can just read Srila Prabhupada's books, you're in pretty good shape. That's 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 a lot. You could render a lot of service by reading, and you can completely transform your life and absolutely be ecstatic. If all you can do is hear, that's tremendous. That's huge. That's all you need. You know, any one process of devotional service is sufficient. If you can do any of them, you're doing great. It's all you need. So, anyway, the notion that there are impediments is false, and one should abandon that. It's easy to convince yourself that there are impediments, that I can't do this or that anymore, and it's impeding my devotional service, and I can't relish devotional service. I can't experience the same ecstasy that I once did. But it's not true. You just have to adjust, and with time, Krishna will show you the way to readjust things and continue your devotional service in great ecstasy. That's my position. That's my story. Sticking to it. Um, I believe that firmly. Srila Prabhupada says it's got to be true. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your comments, Prabhu, and your inspiration and setting the example for all of us. Yeah, I don't think I am capable of adding anything to that answer, so I won't even try. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, going once, going twice. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Vishnupadaya Vishnupastaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine
Bij Bouwwerk is Lotus Feet is great honor and reverence. His grace, like it was the ocean of Jerusalem, and obtain the mercy of Christian. And he wishes to record conscience that is purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment with Lotus Feet is perfection, fulfills all desire.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna Krishna. Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna Krishna. Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna 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 Krishna, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Krishna, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Ram Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Krishna 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 Krishna, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Ram, Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare 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 Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna. Jai Prabhu Nityananda.
So You know, I wanted you to name exactly concern. Yeah, like, oh, oh, yeah, 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 now we'll sing. No, no, I need to call the wall. We have to say that. Because you have